Hey everybody, we are looking at lesson 4-4, writing equations from tables and graphs. In order to write an equation in slope-intercept form, there are two pieces of information that we need. We need the slope, also known as m, and we need the y-intercept. Once we have these two values, we can write the equation in the form of y equals mx plus b, or also known as slope-intercept form. Sometimes you're given a table. From that table, first thing that we need to do is we can find slope by calculating from y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Look for the y-intercept as the value of y, where the x value is equal to 0. So what that means is look at the table, and when x is 0, what is y? Once you have that, if it's in the table, then that's your y-intercept. So that's not too hard to find if it's there. If you're given a graph, which is my favorite, from a graph you can find the slope by setting up your ratio of rise over run. You guys have been doing that for a few weeks now, so I think you're pretty good at it. And to find the y-intercept, just look and see where the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay, so let's put that into practice. We're given a table here. Luke's family goes to the movies and they buy a large popcorn. They're debating on whether or not to purchase drinks. The table shows how much they'll spend based on the number of drinks they decide to purchase. So what's the slope? So the instructions right above, it says from a table, we can find the slope by calculating y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In a table, first amount is always your x, second amount is always your y. So I always like to label, this is x1, x2, y1, y2. So I'm going to use my formula of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I have, oh, by the way, you might want to grab a calculator. Don't know if you'll need it yet or not, but just have it handy. Okay, so I'm going to take 10, which is y2, minus y1, which is $6.25. Divide that by 1 minus 0. So when I subtract that, I get $3.75 over 1. So our slope is 3.75. The y-intercept, based on that information above, look to see when x is 0, what is y? And that gives you your y-intercept. So that is $6.25 or 6.25. So to write an equation, we know that slope is equal to m, y-intercept is b, so y equals mx plus b. We're going to do y equals m is 3.75, x plus b, which is 6.25. Okay, that's just half the battle. Now we have to explain what it represents. Remember, slope is always the change in y over the change in x. So we need to talk about the y first, and the y is the total cost. Okay, so the slope is 3.75. That represents the cost per drink is $3.75. Okay, so again, up top is the total cost per drink. The y-intercept means how much did it cost if you bought no drinks? Well, popcorn is what they bought, so the cost of the popcorn without buying any drinks. Okay. All right, let's take a look at number 2. Number 2 is a graph. Okay, Betty's Bakery uses chocolate chip cookie recipe that calls for a ratio of brown sugar to butter as shown in the graph. What's the slope? Well, they've given us the 2 points, so I'm going to go ahead and draw my right triangle from those 2 points that they gave us. Okay, I check my axes to see what they're counting by. They're both counting by 1s. So this is up 1, 2, 3, over 1, 2, 3, 4. So up 3 over 4, that is our slope. What's the y-intercept? Well, it starts at the origin, so that means it's proportional. Hopefully you remember that from a couple weeks ago. And the y-intercept is 0. So our equation of y equals mx plus b, y equals 3/4 x plus 0. But remember, it's proportional, so we don't need the plus 0 there. What does the slope represent? So again, remember change in y over change in x. Y represents brown sugar, cups of brown sugar, and x represents cups of butter. So let's address the brown sugar first. The recipe uses 3 cups of brown sugar for every 4 cups of butter. All right, the last question says, what does the y-intercept represent in this situation? So again, the y-intercept's right here at 0, 0. Okay, so that just means that the recipe uses 0 cups of brown sugar for 0 cups of butter. And I just saw I left out the word recipe there, so I'm going to put that in there. Okay, I'm sure you caught that already. All right, so that's from our graph. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Number 3 has a table. So again, remember this is x, this is y. A plane uses a certain amount of fuel based on the number of miles it travels as shown in the table. So what is the slope? Again, I'm going to label, this would be x1, y1, x2, y2, and I'm going to subtract those out. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 gives me 152 over 30. I do need my calculator for this one. And I get 5.2. So my slope is 5.2. What's the y-intercept? Well, when x is 0, y is also 0. So hopefully you recognize that table as being proportional. So when we write the equation, we just have y equals mx. So y equals 5.2x. All right. What does the slope represent in this situation? Again, remember, we're going to address the y first. Okay, so the y is gallons of fuel. So what that means is the plane uses 5.2 gallons of fuel per 1 mile. Okay. What does the y-intercept represent in this situation? Well, it's 0. So that means the miles traveled is 0 as well. So the plane uses 0 gallons of fuel per 0 miles. Okay. Are you getting the hang of these? I hope. All right, let's take a look at number 4. All right, Robert pays for his family to go bowling. He first rents shoes for everyone. Then he pays an amount per game. So there's your slope right there, per game, that his family plays as shown in the graph. What's the slope? Okay, from the graph, we have to pick our own points. They didn't do that for us. There's one, there's one. I'm going to use these. I noticed that the graph is counting by threes. So this is 3, 6, 9. Number of games is by 1, so 1, 2. All right, so the slope is 9 over 2. Okay. But I want to, that's not making a whole lot of sense to me. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. The y-intercept is 12. What I mean that doesn't make sense is we're talking about cost per game. Does it make sense to have 9 over 2 per game? That's how much it costs, is 9 over 2 per game. No, so we need it per one game. So I want to divide that out, and I get 4.5 over, total cost of 4.5 over one game. So let me go ahead and do that. So in our equation, this is non-proportional, so we do have an m and a b. So y equals 4.5x plus b. All right, so what does the slope represent in the equation? Change over y, change over x. Y is cost, x is game, so cost per game. So the slope represents the cost per game. So it costs $4.50 per game. What does the y-intercept represent in this situation? Well, if they play 0 games, it's still going to cost $12. What did they pay for before they started paying per game? That's right, Robert paid for shoe rental. Okay, so it costs $12 for shoe rental for the entire fam. And that's it. I think the prep work is pretty straightforward, just kind of exactly like that. If you have any questions, please find Mrs. Bird or myself, and we'll be happy to help you.